Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have Scott Haley, an XYPN member and founder of Prelude Financial, on the show today. Scott started his career with a few different larger firms before ultimately getting his wish and joining a fee-only firm. After ultimately getting fired from his final employee position, he had the realization that starting his own business was a much better way to provide his family with financial security, so he embarked to launch his own firm. His wife was also starting a business at the same time, and they had a newborn daughter. And he talks about just how crazy that time period was. It is not a path I recommend, but he has definitely been successful. He has a really interesting service model, as he found that CPAs wouldn't refer in business. So he went out and got his enrolled agent designation and started providing tax preparation and projection services, and his business has taken off. This has been a big reason for the growth he's experienced over the last year. And going into tax season, he'll do tax returns for retail clients and hopes to convert at least 10% of those into ongoing retainer-paying clients. In fact, he's one of the few XYPN members who actually has a retail storefront so that he can attract in tax business and then hopefully continue to engage the ones that make sense in ongoing financial planning services. Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionist, the only live remote receptionist service dedicated to helping financial service professionals win more clients and build trust. From their studio in Portland, Oregon, Ruby's friendly professional receptionists ensure exceptional client experiences by answering calls live in English or Spanish, transferring calls, taking messages, addressing common problems, collecting new client intake, making follow-up calls, and more, just like an in-house receptionist, but at a fraction of the cost. Let Ruby help you turn your rings into relationships. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN or call 1-844-853-7829. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/137. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here is my interview with Scott. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Glad to be on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited because you have a really unique business model. We get tons of questions from advisors that are looking at either transitioning from being CPAs into being financial planners, or are financial planners and either have an EA or a CPA background in doing tax returns. So if you will, just give listeners sort of a broad overview of your business, sort of where things stand today, and then we'll dig into the details as we go.
Yeah, I'm just now coming through finishing up my second year in business. Started off with just doing financial planning with my company, Prelude Financial. And this last year, about a year ago, I started doing tax preparation as well and launched a separate tax planning and preparation firm called Allegro Tax Solutions. But, things are going really good. Having a little bit of a hard time keeping up with, I guess, the full workload of managing both, but it's an exciting time.
Yeah. So how many clients do you currently serve?
With Prelude, I have 18 ongoing clients, and with Allegro, as of today, I just brought on 2 more clients for that. So I've got 6 ongoing clients for Allegro right now too.
Okay. And then have you been doing any one-time work and that sort of thing? Or are those like the primary service model is retainer-based financial planning and tax prep?
The first year that I was in business, I did a good amount of one-off plans. I think I did 12 plans that were just project-based. In my second year now, so at the beginning of year 2, I switched around my business model to be 100% retainer focused. And so now it's just a mixture of retainer and AUM.
Okay. And I definitely want to dig into the details on how that transition has gone for you. So just to take a step back, how did you get into financial planning? Has this always been your career, or is this something that you discovered later on?
So it's pretty much always been my career. I had a little bit of a rocky start. I went to school at college studying financial planning at the University of Akron and graduated kind of right in the midst of the recession at the end of 2009. Couldn't find any firms that were looking to take on new associates. So I actually started off working for Edward Jones, which was a really unique, horrible experience.
That's a great way to put it. Unique, horrible.
Yeah. All I can say is the door knocking is real. And they really, at least from my experience, they didn't want me to practice financial planning. They just wanted me to sell product. And that was the same experience that I had with my internship. I interned with Northwestern Mutual. So they pretty much wanted to do all of the planning for you and then just give you their recommendations and have you deliver that to the client. So it wasn't really good for me because I'm a curious person. And I started asking a lot of questions like, why is this the best recommendation for this situation? Tell me more about it. I wanted to be educated and give my clients good advice. And they said, that's not your job. Your job is to find the next client so we can build more recommendations and you can deliver them.
So let me ask you, in your opinion, now that you have a lot more experience, were the recommendations around the financial planning, obviously the product stuff's its own game, but were the financial planning recommendations pretty solid? Was it good planning, just a weird process because you couldn't do the recommendations, or do you feel like it was pretty low level planning? I don't know. What's your assessment now of the quality of planning you were being given to deliver?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'd say it's a difference in quality of planning, especially when I was with Edward Jones. And this might come as a little bit of a shock, but Northwestern Mutual's planning in comparison to Edward Jones was actually decent. Edward Jones, they literally they didn't care about doing any kind of financial plan whatsoever. They just wanted to be pretty much a portfolio manager. That's it. So there was no retirement plan that went into it. There was just, hey, you have these assets. You have this risk tolerance. Here's the portfolio that we would recommend for you. On the flip side with Northwestern Mutual, it was kind of low-level planning, nothing too sophisticated, but at least they were going into areas that, were risk management and investment and savings. But again, even under that model, it was kind of pretty easy planning. Somebody would be able to take all of the client's input, from whatever fact finding we would do and pretty much put out a financial plan within a half hour. So it was a pretty canned approach too, but at least it covered more areas than just managing the investments.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, again, the product stuff aside, it's actually good to know that some of these companies are pushing into doing at least what I'll call level 1 financial planning. Some of those foundational pieces, hopefully it starts to spark curiosity among clients and starts to spark questions, because that's a valuable service. Like I said, it's much lower level. However, it's also, they can do it for a lot more people. So if they can go out there and do that for 10 million people, and the 5 million or the 1 million, however many, decide, hey, I want to go deeper, I'm going to go hire a real financial planner, then they go find a CFP that's in an RIA, instead of that. Now, I wish that wasn't being used to then sell, rising premium disability insurance policies, which again is a conversation for another day.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually right after, I did a little bit of job hopping. So I went from Edward Jones to PNC Bank. And then within maybe 4 or 5 months, I had my first opening at a fee-only firm. It was about an hour away from where I lived, but I was so eager to get into the fee-only world, and I was from the get-go, that I took it, even with, it was a 52-mile commute one way. So I was doing 104 miles a day.
So do you remember how you discovered fee-only planning? Because, I talked to some folks that are at Northwestern Mutual or Edward Jones. They don't even know this side of the world exists. So was there some particular way you got exposed to it?
Yeah. So actually, I have a family member, or I guess a distant family member, who's the owner of Galecki Financial Management. His name's Greg Galecki, and he's located in Indiana. And I had a few really good conversations with him when I was going through school kind of early on. And, he was kind of pretty good resource for me. He mentored me a little bit and taught me about fee-only planning. And then from there, while I was in school, I pretty much was reaching out to fee-only planners through NAPFA, and I was just picking their brain. I mean, I kind of feel bad now because I realize how much time I was taking up, but it was
okay.
Yeah, I mean, they were fine to give the advice. So there's probably 2 or 3 in the local area, or not local, but, within Ohio, that would let me bend their ear for, a few minutes here and there. And they introduced me to fee-only planning and told me about it and educated me about it. And it was before my senior year that I knew that fee-only was where I wanted to go. I just had bad timing with graduation, being in the end of 2009, and wasn't able to find a position with a company that was hiring. So it took me about a year until I found that, and about a year and a half. But once I did, then I never wanted to get out of fee-only planning from there on.
I think it goes to show, people always say, like, we talk big picture, like, how do we get more people into financial planning, and how do we tell more students about it? And it really does come down to those one-on-one conversations. And just, if you're an advisor that wants to make a difference, make a commitment to talk to one student a month or one a quarter, if that's what you can do. And just tell them about what we do.
Yeah. And you know what? The funny thing is, since I've been in fee-only planning, I've tried to be a very active part of, my alumni association with Akron, because the University of Akron has a really good CFP program track. And the problem, though, is that there's extremely limited visibility to fee-only planning within it.
Sure.
But I think I've had my name on a list of people wanting to speak for probably like 4 years now. And I've talking to everybody that's in charge of the program. And even, they say, they're like, yeah, we would love to have you come out, but then nothing ever happens.
Interesting.
So, I mean, like I've tried a lot over the years to get into the universities, but I think that they just get bombarded with so many companies like the Northwestern Mutuals that they just drop the ball from time to time. But yeah, if you can get out to the students and let them know, like, hey, you're going through a pretty difficult program. Financial planning is not the easiest of the business degrees. You're coming out with a pretty good, education. You're not going to be limited in your career insights in terms of just being a salesman. Like, there's much more opportunity out there to be in a field that's highly analytical while still having the social aspect.
Yeah, it is a great point. Going back to the universities is so critical, but it is tough. You really do have to have a good in, if you will. And one, if you really want to get in, one recommendation I have is to offer to speak to a class and not just like their student association. You can do one of two routes, but like sometimes the student associations meet once a month. They really only get a few speakers in there, but I've done quite a bit of classroom presentations. And usually the professors really appreciate that. I just reach out to the professors directly and say, hey, if you ever want me to, I'll be in Athens, Georgia, either my alma mater, or I'll be in Columbus, Ohio. So Ohio State professor, I can stop in. But it does make a big difference for them to see and have a conversation with a real financial planner, because then they can see the difference between what you do and what they're going to be doing at Edward Jones, who is certainly going to be recruiting them heavily.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I think that's good feedback, because the one thing that I haven't tried is talking to the professors directly. So I'm going to give that a shot here, probably after tax season.
Exactly. Not before.
No, not before.
So you found the opportunity with the fee-only firm, and like I said, it was an hour drive away, which is a haul, but worth it if it's in the right field. So what was the position that you were coming into, and sort of how did that go?
It was an associate advisor position. So pretty much I was his paraplanner, but it was a really cool, unique experience because it was just me and the owner. And this was an extremely productive firm. I mean, he had maybe 68 clients and we were managing about $340 million. And he was doing broad scope planning. He was doing really good planning. So it gave me, I pretty much built my current firm off of that model. He showed me everything from the day-to-day to, you imagine what could have been done, and I did it.
Right.
So all levels of operations I got exposed to. But it just came down to the time where me and my fiance at the time, we wanted to start a family. So I took a position with another fee-only firm that was about a half-hour drive from my house, and actually went to work with Justin Rush, who's another XY member.
Yeah.
And I spent about a year and a half with them, and unfortunately it didn't work out. It wasn't a good culture fit, and kind of happened at the same time that Justin announced that he was launching his own firm, that the separation occurred with me as well.
Oh man. So I was thinking you meant you worked with Justin after he launched. So you were both at the same firm.
Yeah.
And essentially both left and started your own firms.
Well, so yeah, it was a funny situation because Justin announced that he was leaving, and within like a week or two, the owner pretty much he made a announcement at one of our meetings with all of the employees that, I was getting a promotion to pretty much fill his shoes. And then the day after he made that announcement, he let me go.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty roller coaster of a ride, but looking back at it, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, largely because, we talk about finding a firm where you can get good hands-on experience where, you really need to take time learning what real financial planning is. But I think what doesn't get touched over at all is finding a firm that's a good cultural fit. So
that's a great point, because we talk a lot about like fee only, because obviously there's a major culture difference between commission only, hybrid, and then, fee only. And if you're doing financial planning versus just investments, but it does go deeper than that.
Yep.
When you can be at a firm, and I was at a firm that, did great financial planning, but me and the boss just didn't get along, and we just had different visions for what the firm was going to be. And like I said, we don't talk about that enough, that like how difficult it is, but how important it is to find that right culture fit.
Yeah. So, in hindsight now, I mean, if I would have stayed with my first position, I probably would have been working my way into partner by now with that company. It was a great cultural fit. Me and him, we just clicked really well. We were very productive together, and he was a really good mentor. He's still a mentor to me now. I'm really thankful to have him as a resource. But yeah, when I went over to working with Justin, me and Justin got along great. It was just me and everybody else. So,
right.
And
understood.
Yeah, I mean, Justin has been one of those people in my life, at least with my firm, that, he's an indispensable resource that I lean on him from time to time, asking him questions, and he's always there. So I definitely got a lot of value out of gaining that friendship with him.
So, you get let go, which is it's always listeners know, I was fired from my last job.
Yep.
Unexpectedly, just, basically with 30 minutes notice, go clean out your desk.
Yep.
And it's a weird feeling, or at least this was my experience, where it was just like relief that I did not have to come back on Monday.
Yeah.
And then terror of, I didn't know where I was going to go on Monday.
Well, yeah. So with me, it was, to add on a layer of complexity, my wife was 5 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
At that time. And he gave us 6 months severance, which.
Oh, okay. That's generous.
Yeah. It made it really good. It was really generous. So at that point, I started to plan out my own firm. I started to plan out Prelude. I started to look into the XY network, get everything in order. But 3 months into the severance, he let me go, or he cut the severance. So he stopped paying it. And he, pretty much went back on his word about finishing it through. So I did a knee-jerk reaction at that point, and just, I picked up a position working with Northwestern Mutual again, and realized again why that didn't work out in the first place. And then it was a month after my daughter was born that I left Northwestern Mutual to start Prelude again.
What a roller coaster. That you said she was 4 or 5 months pregnant. So
yep.
Yeah, that is 4 to 5 months of getting let go, severance, stopping a job, stopping a job, and deciding to start a business.
Yeah. The big thing, I guess it wasn't a matter of the money working for Northwestern Mutual. You can make great money working there. There's no doubt about that.
Sure.
But the problem that I had was, a few of my own ethical boundaries were being pushed, certain recommendations that I wouldn't make were being pressed upon me. And pretty much, it was like the second time that happened that I just told my wife, I was like, I can't do this. Can't do this to the clients that I'm bringing on. And, I want to do it on my own. I'm bringing in the clients, Northwestern Mutual is not helping me out at all. So the only thing that was holding us back at the time was just the startup capital. So we just made that jump.
Was your wife working at the time?
She was not. She was on maternity leave, and she was in the process of starting up her own company as well. So both me,
I love it.
Yeah, me and my wife both have our own thing now. We both work for ourselves. Looking back 2 years ago, or now 2.5 years ago from when the time we started, I don't know what we were thinking. It was crazy. I mean, I have a heart attack just thinking back to those early months.
Yeah, it reminds me, we had Trace Tisler on the show back in episode 64. He and his wife did the same thing. They both decided to launch businesses at the same time. You had the extra layer of complexity that you had a baby.
Yep.
So talk to me about that thought process. Because, I mean, most people, especially when they're having a kid, I mean, from conception till they're at least one, the assumption is don't do anything stupid. Right? Don't do anything extreme. Let's just figure out if the baby sleeps or not, and sort of get used to your life. So I guess talk to me about the conversations between you and your wife that you were both going to do this at the same time with a newborn. Yeah.
So getting fired actually really scared the crap out of me. And it probably ruined me for life forever being an employee for somebody else because I guess, looking at it from a financial planning standpoint and looking at risk management, I realized I'm like, working for somebody else is probably the riskiest thing that I could do because that one person's in control of my life. I would much rather have every client being my boss, which, you have a lot of them. Yeah. So if one fires me, it's okay. I've got, 17 others that are still hiring me. So we just thought it'd actually be safer to do it on our own. We were pretty confident in our ability. We, obviously had done things right financially and were able to, tighten up the budget and make it work. But we just decided, you know what, let's get it out of the way while our daughter is still young and before she remembers that daddy's working super late. Let's just get all the hard years out of the way before she's really active and is going to notice when I'm not there. So we did it. I mean, that was just it. It wasn't even really a second thought. We just said, this is what we're doing. It's going to be really hard. It's going to suck, but we're going to get through it.
Now, what business did your wife start?
She makes baby wraps for mothers. So imagine a old-fashioned loom that you throw this shuttle back and forth and take yarn and turn it into fabric. Mm-hmm. She does that, and she makes these, I call them gigantic scarves that are, 5 to 7 meters long that you wrap a baby on you as a carrier. Yeah. Sort of like a handmade Moby wrap in a way. Yeah, but the thing that blew me away, so it was kind of eye-opening. I come home one day and she's telling me, she's like, oh yeah, I sold one of these wraps that I bought. And I'm like, oh, that's great. What, like $50? And she's like, no, I sold it for $180. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, there you go.
You've got like 12 of these.
It's a real business.
Then she's like, yeah, I really want to buy a handmade one though. I'm like, well, how much is that? She's like, oh, it's about $700. So I'm like, oh, let's go buy you the machine so you can make them. So yeah, now she sells, probably a handful of these wraps every month for, $600 or $700 a piece. Wow. The closest thing I could think about is it's a lot like being a drug dealer. I mean, I have no clue. Oh yeah, no, she hates that joke, but I mean, people love spending money on these things. It blows me away, but it's a great business for her. So she does really good at it. Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things you mentioned was startup capital. So did you have money in the bank, or was that a big concern on how to afford sort of the first couple of years of getting this thing ramped up? So that was probably the hardest thing that we had to figure out. We had been, before leading up to this, we were in debt payoff mode where we had wiped out all of our, existing debts. So we had a whole lot of credit available, but we didn't have a whole lot of cash. I actually ended up getting a partner to help me out with the financial burden of it. And he pretty much financed everything for me to start up and get going and to make sure that we would, pretty much be successful from an expense standpoint. My job then was just to bring on the clients and do my thing.
Interesting. So was this person in financial planning or just a family friend?
So he's family.
Okay.
I look at him like he's my uncle, but he's my stepdad's uncle. It's his brother-in-law that is the owner of Galecki Financial Management. He's the one that put me in contact with him when I was younger. And he is just an absolute genius. If I could take him and get him through a CFP, he would be the best planner, I think, in Ohio. He's just extremely smart, great with money, super interested in finance and investing, especially planning. And he's always wanted to be a business owner. So when I was, this whole thing kind of came up because we were talking about it at a family event. And I was like, yeah, I just don't know how we're going to get started, but, we'll figure something out. And he's just like, well, let's talk. So he started it up and we just ran with it.
So can you give me any details around like how you split ownership and how you're handling, your salary and then profits? Because that's sort of it's definitely a unique way of building it.
Yeah, I'd say that I'm probably one on the more unique side of the XY members. I was extremely generous in, I guess, the ownership split. So I retained 60% and he's got 40%. And he pretty much provided the startup capital for the first 2 years, which was the commitment, and which equaled, X amount, let's just say. But it included a small base salary for me plus office expenses, XY membership, so on and so forth. So in the first year, we just worked off of guaranteed payments. So that was just, saying, hey, my partner made this deposit, which is paid in capital. I'm taking a draw off of it to cover, my salary so that I can continue paying my bills. And instead of paying taxes on that twice, we called it guaranteed payments. And, we worked it out that way. We did that for the first year. In this second year, we were at a point where I started paying myself a salary. And in the third year, we're going to be releasing our first profit distributions. So anything above and beyond like the expenses, and I consider my salary to be an expense, anything above and beyond that is going to be split 60-40 between the two of us. So, we've got it worked out to where at certain profit levels, my personal income will be, say, X amount of this number, and then anything above and beyond that's distribution. So
got it.
Yeah.
So you've based your salary on revenue in a way. So, I'll just make, at 100,000 in revenue, you make 50,000. At 500,000, you make 90,000 or whatever. And then anything over that, that's not expenses or your salary, essentially gets, sent out in terms of profits.
Yeah. So, we're not going to release any profit distributions until after my income is, within a little over 100,000. But our expenses on a monthly basis are probably much higher because our annual expenses are about $26,000 a year, largely because we have a retail style office for the tax firm. So the rent's a little bit higher.
Okay. Yeah, this is really unique. If listeners have listened to my story, I took out a loan from my parents to cover expenses, and it never occurred to me to partner with someone. But like I said, it's a little unique because he already knew the space. I feel like this is people ask me all the time if you can get a small business loan for starting a financial planning firm. And I don't see that happen very often because it's a cash flow business.
Right.
It's not give me, $100,000. I'm going to buy $100,000 of machinery. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, there's no collateral.
Exactly. There's no collateral. So you end up with personal guarantees and super high interest rates.
Yeah.
So it is really tough, but this is a really cool way to do it. If you know someone who, again, is interested in being a business owner, maybe has a background as a business owner, is willing to get involved.
Yeah. And, from my own personal standpoint, the way I look at it, not only because it's family, but as an investor, this is probably the riskiest investment that I think somebody could have made aside from like a startup tech company. So for me, I'm like, yeah, well, we really do need to make it worth its while and make sure that those distributions are a meaningful amount for the capital that you contributed. So, I definitely wanted to structure it in a way that would be a good return for him over the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it is high risk, but it's also like these are businesses though that I don't know. There may be other ways to make a lot more money with that capital, but I view starting a financial planning firm as much lower risk than many of the businesses that you could start. I just started reading, or I just got finished reading The E-Myth Revisited for the first time, which is a wonderful book for any new entrepreneur. I wish I had read it. But the E-Myth talks about, so the E is entrepreneurship myth. And it does go into some of the, what we believe to be entrepreneurship and the difference between creating a job for yourself and creating a business. And fascinating book. But the point that's applicable here was he talks about the failure rate of small businesses. And thank goodness we don't have that failure rate in financial planning, or XY Planning Network wouldn't exist, right? If we had an 80% failure rate in the first few years of business, none of our members would still be around. However, convincing someone to put up cash and to pay a little bit of a base salary and all of that, like that, it is an interesting conversation. I'm very impressed with that. I don't think I've ever heard of that model before.
Yeah, it was, well, I mean, I got really lucky. I consider myself to be very fortunate, but I think that, the business model that I had picked out from the get-go was, it's a solid model. And as long as you execute everything, I don't see how it can really fail unless you're just being lazy.
Unless you're not out there selling.
Yeah. And that's it. At some point, you have to get out there and work. And I'm probably not the best example of, a top blogger or podcaster or, marketer. But what I am really good at is in-person networking. So I probably go to 2 or 3 networking events a week, and I just try to meet as many people and make as many connections as possible. So that works for me. It's just my style. Now, I want to get into other forms more so throughout this year, and that's a big goal of mine. But I think in the first couple of years, it's just a matter of finding what works for you and your style and not trying to fight it.
So talk to me about sort of launching the firm and the initial business model of financial planning and sort of how you initially built it and then sort of how that has progressed over time.
Yeah. So the initial model was, I knew that, revenue was important, and doing one-off plans was going to be a good way for me to get a kind of a immediate return rather than trying to get, AUM clients that are going to pay you this much out on an annual basis. So I did a lot of one-off plans in my first year. Well, not a lot. I did maybe 12. And then I had a few retainer here and there. And the first year was actually pretty good. It wasn't bad at all. And it kind of validated the proof of concept behind having a tax firm and a financial planning firm. In the beginning, I thought that the key would just be doing tax preparation. And when my firm was approved, it was in March of 2016. And I missed out on that tax season. So it wasn't until the following year that I actually got to do taxes as well. And that was beautiful validation that, yes, doing taxes is a great side hustle, first of all. And it's a great way to build a pipeline of prospects or to build out your funnel so that you have people that you can reach out to throughout the year. And that's really where I'm at now, is continuing to build out that model to really maximize the growth, because I'm pretty lucky in my area where I know that there's no other fee-only planners in my entire county. So I get a lot of meetings, prospect meetings, just off of people finding me through NAPFA or just Google. But, to steady that out or to enhance that, having the tax prep clients is really a good opportunity to identify prospects that you want to work with, and then find areas within their taxes that you can improve their situation on. And then it really makes that conversation extremely easy just by saying, hey, you're paying X amount in ordinary income taxes off of these, this income that you're receiving from your investments in this taxable account. Well, if we change that around a little bit, you could save that. So it really is a gentle conversation, and people are very receptive to it. And that's the entire direction that I wanted to go. I don't want to have to feel like I'm selling to anybody. I want to feel like I'm helping people. So it works really well for me. But this will be the first year. Starting here in February 1st, we'll be full go with an entire season of, taxes to do. And, the goal will be to try to do, over 100 and convert 10% of those throughout the year to financial planning.
It's a really interesting way of looking at it. That's sort of always been the math, right? Give out 10 business cards, get hopefully 3 calls, 1 client.
Yeah.
So if you do 100 tax returns, get 10 clients, I actually wonder if you'll get 25.
I'm curious myself too, because last year I approached a few people about it and I didn't have anybody turn me down. I mean, once I found people that I could save money for, the conversation was like, well, yeah, where do I sign up for this? So it was a pretty easy conversation. People wanted to work with me once I was able to show them that value. And that part right there actually changed around the whole way that I go about bringing on a new client entirely. So in my first year, I think I had a close rate of maybe like 60%. And now I think I've got a close rate of about 95%.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big jump.
So you have your enrolled agent or your EA designation. Did you already have that when you started the firm, or did you go through that over the last year as sort of part of this new service model transition?
I actually did that at the same time that I was getting the registration in order for my firm. So I was finding that, in getting the registration together, you'd have a day of really intensive work, and then you'd be sitting around for 2 or 3 days while the compliance officer got back to you. And then you'd have another 2 or 3 days of hard work. So I was finding that I wanted to fill that time with productive activities. And I was able to do the EA at the same time as getting my firm registered and getting everything in place.
While hanging out with your new daughter.
Yeah, while hanging out with
you were busy. Oh man, I cannot imagine. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
So tell me about sort of the current fee structure and service model. So I'm a new client that comes to you. Do I only start via tax return and then become a planning client, or can I come to you specifically for planning?
Yeah, you can come however you'd like. So I kind of let people pick how they want to work with me. If it's either retainer or AUM, my only requirement is that there's something fun within the plan to work on. I mean, if somebody's coming to me and let's say they're 70 years old and they've got $2 million, that's not a lot of fun. Yeah, it's good revenue, but there's nothing really to dig your teeth in from a planning standpoint. And that's not how I wanted to build my firm. So I try to focus on people who have tax planning issues. And I'm extremely transparent about that ahead of time. And I let people know I only take on 10 new clients a year. So as you're evaluating me, I'm also evaluating you to make sure that it's a good fit long term. But I let people pick, if they want to work off of me from a retainer standpoint or an AUM standpoint, it's up to them. Most of the time I see that they start off as a retainer and then switch over to AUM, if that makes sense. Largely because most of the people that I'm working with now have sufficient assets, and the fee is about the same no matter how I split it. So I try to make it as even as possible.
So you just give them the option of whether or not to pay. And what's your typical retainer fee? So
my typical retainer fee is about $200 a month.
Okay.
And that's going to go up to $250 this year. Or it went up to $250 this year. And with that, I probably have 6 clients right now that are on that schedule, and the rest are all AUM.
Okay.
But at a certain point, it becomes just more beneficial to pay me off of the assets.
Sure.
You get that little tax break by taking it from the IRA. So people like that.
So, but you are giving them the choice of, hey, I want to pay you via retainer $200 a month, or I'll pay you via AUM I'm assuming with some sort of minimum fee.
Yeah. So it kind of all just depends upon, if they have the assets to support it. I'd say 99% of the time they go with the AUM fee. If they don't have assets, then it just kind of is what it is. There's no other way for me to charge. So
makes sense.
I don't usually run into too many situations like that. I don't claim to be that great at working with younger clients. I do from time to time. And for them, I still kind of offer a one-off plan here and there. But for the most part, what I'm looking for on a retainer client is somebody who's, an up and coming professional in their field, whether it's accountant, engineer, or an attorney of some sort. But aside from whatever profession they're in, I guess what I still come back to is I just really have to like them.
It's so important.
The worst thing, I think, is working with a client that you don't like.
Yeah, I truly believe that's like one of the biggest benefits we don't talk about of starting your own firm and being an owner is being able to choose your clients. Because if you are not an owner, you're just told who you're going to work with, and you just have to work with them whether you like them or not.
Yeah, I actually fired a few clients this year that I really didn't care to work with. And it was one of the more liberating experiences ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. People talk about like how to fire a client, and of course, there's a lot to that. We could do an entire episode on how to fire a client and why to fire a client. Did you find that those were clients that you brought on that you just shouldn't have in the first place? Like you knew they were a bad fit, but you did anyway?
Absolutely.
Or do you think?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So when I first started Prelude, I had this idea in my head that I do a lot of divorce work using the CDFA designation.
Yep.
I realized after my first year that I hated divorce work. And it was probably the most emotionally draining niche that I could have picked.
Yeah, I only laugh because I did the exact same thing. I got my CDFA. Our stories are so similar. I got my CDFA thinking like divorce work. And after about 5 cases, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. This is exhausting.
The thing is, it's really a good niche if you can do it.
It is. Yeah, if you've got the heart for it and just the overall energy, absolutely.
Yeah, but I just didn't want to be Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like I was. I felt like I was Dr. Phil and not a planner.
Yeah, I mean, and I even did collaborative divorce work where you're working with the couple on how to divorce well financially. Because I immediately said, like, I'm not going to court. Like, no one's getting me in court to argue these things. But it's just tough because it's exhausting. That's all.
Yeah, it's a great niche, but it's just very, I don't even want to say time consuming. You really have to care about people in that situation, which I think is the same with any niche really, but just in divorce there's so many emotions running rampant that it's hard.
Yeah, agreed. So, all right. So you started down that niche path that it ended up pulling back. One of the things I was going to ask you was, so you talked about your planning process. How do you charge for tax preparation? Is it just upfront fee of $200, $300, $500, or is it somehow like retainer? Because you had mentioned you have like a certain number on that service. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I have the standard tax prep fees that are listed by the form. So if you have, married filing joint with itemized, it's X amount. If you have this credit, then it goes up. Every form or every schedule has its own fee attached to it. And my average fee usually works out to be anywhere from, $300 to $500. But the cool thing that I'm really excited about this year is I pretty much stripped out the tax planning component of my financial planning firm and put it into my tax firm. And started working with entrepreneurs and small business owners. And that is probably, it's on fire right now. Within just a few months and no marketing whatsoever, have brought on 6 clients. And the minimum fee for that's $125 a month. And it's a pretty easy platform. There's not a whole lot of work that goes on, but the work that we do provide is high value. So that's probably the one, it's the one thing that's got me more excited about anything else right now is doing retainer-based work on tax prep or on tax planning.
Yeah, so give me some more details on that because that's new to me is retainer-based tax prep and planning. So you have folks that are not doing financial planning with you; they are only doing tax prep work or tax-related work. So how often do you meet with them, and sort of what's the deliverable throughout the year in addition to the actual tax return being filed?
Yeah, so I tried to structure this to coincide with my financial planning firm so that I wasn't doing separate tasks at different periods. So every quarter we're doing estimated payments for my financial planning clients and my tax clients. Every year we're doing tax preparation, at the same time. We're doing tax projections usually every June or July, and then again every September, October. So the model that I took was, okay, we're going to be doing tax preparation first and foremost, and then we're going to be doing estimated tax payments where we're actively working with their bookkeeper to make accurate estimates, not just generic safe harbor payments. And then we're doing projections twice a year to try to forecast what that return is going to look like and see what areas of opportunity we can really build upon. And that opens up a tremendous amount of opportunities for the financial planning side, because you start to uncover that, hey, you only need $80,000 to live off of, but you're on track to make $200,000 this year. We can save a lot of money with some cool financial planning. And just by layering in like a solo 401k, you can do $53,000 if you're making $210,000. If you want to go even crazier, then do the DB plan, So it's almost like a way for me to cultivate the next round of business owners to work with on my financial planning firm and kind of cherry pick them at the right time when they're ready to work with me. And it's really becoming a very just natural process where somebody gets to work with me on, say, level 1, which is just the tax planning, and then graduate to level 2, level 3, where now they're getting full on financial planning services and they're still getting the tax planning as well. And it makes me really sticky in that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that it's always been the beauty of, AUM is that it tends to be a pretty sticky relationship. When you add in financial planning, investment management, and tax planning and preparation and projections, like that is a very sticky relationship, because in order to fire you, they have to go find 3 professionals because so few do all 3 of those in one place.
Yep. Yeah. It makes it very hard to leave, but I just really think that it's a good model to be on from the standpoint of, I think the tax industry, or at least the accounting industry, is going to go through kind of the same revolution that financial planning is with the fee structures. And, there's a huge opportunity for accountants to work on a retainer basis doing more than just the prep work, but still be pretty much just doing the prep work. Right. I mean, it's not a whole lot of extra work to go into the planning, but you end up giving a much higher quality deliverable to them as a result. Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting that, CPAs are so well trained in tax law, but most of them are very focused on, looking backwards. They don't really look forwards, which can be real frustrating whenever you're trying to work with their CPA and trying to say like, hey, like give us a recommendation here on what to do. But it can be challenging to get that out of CPAs. And I think it's just going to take it's probably a industry-wide transition that they'll have to go through. But, as long as they keep changing all the tax laws, it's going to be hard for them to do anything other than just keep up with that.
Yeah. And so there was actually an episode that you did with Patrick Brewer not too long ago.
Yeah.
That was kind of like validation of the last 2 years of my getting to this point, because even he was saying, yeah, you can either try to partner with the CPA and hope to get referrals from them, or you could try to find, the local tax prep firm that really is only focusing on doing the preparation and nothing else. Or you could replace one of them and just do it yourself and keep it in-house. So the fact that somebody like Patrick Brewer was onto the same thing that I'm doing was like, oh, okay, this must be a good idea, because he's a marketing whiz. So if he's looking at it for his own firm, then I'm onto the right track.
So did you try to partner with any CPAs before you ended up launching this service model?
Yeah, I did. I tried to partner with probably 3 different accountants, and no matter how much I explained it, they didn't understand the difference between me and Edward Jones.
Yeah, that's tough.
And it's largely because that's what they've been exposed to for the last however many years. That's all that they know. So when you start talking about financial planning, they actually were starting to get worried. They're like, well, you're not taking my job, are you? You're not.
You're going to take all the clients.
That was their fear. So I found that partnering with an attorney was 10 times easier than partnering with an accountant. So I just decided to do it myself. And, the prep work's really not that difficult unless you're getting into a really complex return. And it's something that in the future, like next year, I plan on having a few staff members to take that off my hands entirely. So it's not something that I plan on doing forever, but really I just want that to be my sales funnel. I want it to be my funnel that will continue to deliver high value prospects to me and allow me to convert at least 10 a year. And that's really the only thing that I'm focused on is, 10 clients a year. So it's not a hard number to hit, but I want them to be really quality prospects. And the one surprising thing, I've had a few conversations with newer XY members or people looking into it. When I tell them that I actually turn away more new business every year than I take on, they act like they're shocked. But I mean, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you expect, right? When you're starting a business, you expect that you're just constantly going to be hunting, which, you did early on. Obviously, you're coming through that sort of transitioning into, you can be more choosy about the clients you work with. You can let a few of them go because they're not a good fit, which is just all part of the evolution of having the business.
Yep.
But yeah, it is really interesting that, I don't want to dissuade anybody from going out and talking to CPAs and trying to build those sort of influence relationships. But it is a tough conversation. I had the same experience and I still have the same experience. It is easier for me to explain to people that are not anywhere near financial planning. It's easier for me to explain to a doctor what we do than it is for me to explain to an accountant or a quote unquote financial planner that's sort of in the space, just what we do at XY. And I think it's because they just don't, they just don't understand, where we're at with everything.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that have great relationships with CPAs and they are able to cultivate a good relationship. It just didn't happen for me. But yeah, I definitely don't want to dissuade anybody from trying that avenue because it can work out really good.
Absolutely. One of the things that maybe you had mentioned it to me in the pre-call, but that you actually have a retail office location now, which is, again, very rare for XY Planning Network members. So tell me about the decision to get a retail spot and how that has worked out for you.
So the decision for it was we really wanted to maximize the opportunity for the tax preparation, the seasonal tax preparation fees. And it was eye-opening when I started bringing in all these high-value clients that were, making really good money and just doing everything right. They're up-and-coming executives, but they're still using H&R Block. Some of them were still using Liberty Tax. And it was kind of an eye-opener. And I started to look back through, the years of experience I've had, and a lot of people fall into that same category where they don't have the time to go research a good CPA or go find a good accounting firm to work with. So they just work with the most convenient option.
Makes sense.
So we decided to exploit that a little bit and open up a retail location where we can get a high amount of walk-in traffic. And it does subsidize, our expenses. The goal with the tax firm is really, twofold. It's to cover all of our ongoing expenses for both firms. And then really just be my savings vehicle for, my own personal finances. Don't take anything out of it aside from that, but just maximizing the opportunity and trying to get that high client flow was what we were looking for. The downside is that you get walk-in traffic, and I only actually have my door open, like unlocked, in tax season. The rest of the year I keep it locked and a sign on the door says by appointment only.
Mm-hmm.
But where it's actually been extremely good is starting to get into doing a little bit more charity work in the local community, and having retail locations been great for that. We just did a clothing drive for kids, and a lot of people were able to find us because we were easily visible to the community and got a lot of attention, a tremendous amount of attention. And it was something that I didn't think that, my firm was at a point where we could be, giving back and getting into philanthropy, but found out that it's totally within reach. And So having our location be where it's at was actually a huge asset for that component of it, with just, getting into philanthropy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what was the clothing drive? Did you organize it, or were y'all actually contributing?
I organized it myself. I saw a kid walking down the street one day going to school crying. I ran out to him, found out that he was crying because his hands hurt so bad because he didn't have winter gloves on, and he didn't have winter clothing at all. And this is on a day that it was -6 degrees out that morning. So we got him warmed up, got him some, good hat and gloves, sent him to school with some hot cocoa. But it was after that I just decided, I put out a Facebook message kind of complaining to the community, but kind of like just letting them know that, we'll have hats and gloves available at my office for any kid in need this year. Didn't expect it to become a thing. And the next thing I know, I've had probably 100 hats and gloves donated so far and given out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, given out probably 80 of them, and, got covered by, News Channel 5 came out and did a interview and got a lot of exposure from that. But within like a 1 week period, it just exploded. And having that retail location enabled me to kind of be able to see what's going on and be able to help out.
That's incredible. Thank you for doing that. I mean, and obviously you didn't do it for marketing reasons, but what a powerful, way to give back and to be able to help out in the community, while also, obviously there is a benefit there as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're coming from a good place, philanthropy could be the best marketing you can do, but it has to be from a genuine place where you want to help out. So I know a lot of people abuse that, but if you can find a cause to get behind, I think that could be pretty powerful because you can resonate within that community.
So what's on the docket for the next year or two? Sort of where's your focus going to be with the firm as you continue to grow?
Short term, I've got an audit coming up next month. So
congratulations. Yeah, that'll be fun.
That's number 2. Baby 2 is coming. My wife's scheduled to give birth on March 28th. So
congratulations right there at the end of tax season. Good timing.
But with all that aside, just continue growing. I don't want to top out on clientele for a few more years, so I'm becoming more and more selective. But I'm working on I just brought on a bookkeeper for the tax firm. So I'm going to be passing off all bookkeeping related activities to her, which bookkeeping is something that I don't do right now, but she ended up stealing a client from me. So I hired her. And she does really good work. So aside from that, getting some sort of assistant in the office is going to be helpful. And then just trying to find, 1 or 2 good seasonal tax preparers, to bring on for next year is going to be really helpful. But I guess it's just continue with doing what's working. I mean, having the tax firm has been really beneficial. I converted a few clients last year from tax to financial planning, and I just plan on continuing to do it. I really am struggling with trying to find some sort of like effective communication for social media. And I think I finally found it, and I'm going to be doing a podcast called Just Do the Math. And it's going to be something completely random where I just want to have fun. Talk about obscure financial planning issues, just what people can do that maybe not even thinking about, like breastfeeding over buying formula or cloth diapering or, whatever. I found that I got really tired of blogging about pretty much doing research-based blogs that talked about retirement planning, really burnt me out. And it became a chore. So the motive for this year is just have as much fun as possible.
So as we are coming to a close, we'll wrap up with the final question. And that is, if there's one piece of advice, one thing you wish you had known before that you know now, so that one piece of advice you would go back and give yourself, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Oh, man, give me a second on this one. That's a tough question. I'd say just get ready. I mean, if you're in the beginning stages of starting your own firm, get ready for some extremely long hours, but get ready to have the best time of your life. Because I've got friends now that are, were encouraged by me. They're starting up their own companies now, and I'm looking at where they're at. And I'm like, wow, you're just now in the beginning phases of it. And I'm a little bit jealous because of how much fun I had during that time and the absolute roller coaster that came with it. But I'd say just try to have fun. If you're not having fun, then what's the point? You have to find some way to make it fun. And for me, the exciting factor was, looking back at it now, my daughter's a little over 2. I get to, have her at the office playing around while I'm working if, need be. I get to set my own hours, get to do whatever I want from that standpoint as long as I'm getting my work done. Oh, actually, here's a good bit of advice. We're so focused on side hustles in the first year that we forget about the quality of what we're doing. So if you think about being a paraplanner for another company, yeah, that's a good side hustle. But try to make your side hustle something that will help your firm, help your success from more than just a monetary standpoint. Find a way to incorporate it into your marketing. For me, it was doing tax preparation. So the prep work became my sales funnel to get more clients. But I don't think that would have happened if I was bartending and trying to talk to somebody with, a $400,000 salary while I'm giving them a drink. Right. So I guess find a way that you can make your side hustle incorporated within your firm. That way it enhances your success rather than it's just a separate job that you're doing while you're trying to build your firm.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, thank you, Scott, so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your expertise and experience and just all the things that you've been working on. So can't wait to see how this year turns out. May have to have you back on to talk through, what the conversion rate was like for turning tax folks into financial planning clients and to see maybe wildly successful, or maybe you've pivoted and trying something else.
I'm going to be tracking that for the whole next year because I'm very curious about those conversion factors as well. And I want to make sure that it's something that, if it's something that of value, then I'm going to put the research out there for other members to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much again. We appreciate it, and best of luck in the coming year.
Thanks for having me on, Alan.
Let Ruby help you turn rings into relationships. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN or call 1-844-853-7829. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.